Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. If you've been watching my previous videos, you've seen that I've teamed up with Formula Delta as a tester for their high capacity oil pan. For this second gen GR86 and BRZ platform, the FA24D engine suffers from oil pressure drops under high G loads and high RPM. Once I heard they were looking for testers to get more data collection for their pan, I went ahead and jumped at that opportunity. Given that I'm in California, our weather is ideal all year round. They put together a test plan for me to follow, and we did one run as the car was completely stock before the oil pan, and then we did one after the oil pan with some handling mods done to the car. And so we began. I chose one of the closer tracks to me, at Streets of Willow, at Willow Springs. The two dates you see are one before the car was stock, and then after with the pan installed. On both days the weather is pretty consistent, sunny, clear, and dry. A few things I used to make this happen was the AnsixAuto oil pressure sensor plus CAN bus kit, OBD Link MX Plus, Racebox Mini S, and Trueno app. Next you'll see the comparison between stock, which will be on the left, and then the setup afterwards, modified with handling mods, and the oil pan. The goal once the pan was installed was to exaggerate G loads with some alignment and better grip. My oil of choice was Amsoil, and I still stuck with the 0 weight 40 before and after, plus the overfill. You'll notice on the right a difference between a 0.5 and a 0.7 liter overfill. Later, you'll see the comparative differences between the two different overfills. There's going to be a lot of data thrown at you, but to keep it simple, configuration A is the car completely stock, B is with the oil pan at 0.5 overfill, and then C, oil pan with the 0.7 overfill. In the next graph, we're going to isolate starvation occurrences. As you can see in stock form, there are many events that happen in almost every single turn. Then configuration B, only 2 isolated turns, and then configuration C, 0. In the next graph, we'll break down the average per lap of oil starvation, and you can see how consistent the starvation is every single lap. Formula Delta was concerned about oil pressure losses that exceed 30%. As you can see here, it definitely exceeds that number. Out of all the sessions I ran in stock form, this one was my most aggressive, as my transitions going into turns, my braking and gas were very abrupt and very aggressive. The goal was to replicate oil starvation, which I managed to achieve at that time. In configuration B, we chose my most aggressive driving style, abrupt turn-ins, hard on the pedals, and you can see even in some areas, oil starvation has lessened, but was still a problem in other areas. Streets of Willow is a very tight and technical course. Even with my aggressive driving style, in configuration C, you can see how most of the numbers are well below 30%. We experimented with different tire pressures and different approaches to different turns, and overall configuration C seemed to have mitigated all of the issues. In this graph you can compare numerous things, like oil pressure to engine RPM, to oil temperatures, to throttle position, and lateral Gs. This is configuration A on my most aggressive session. In configuration B, with less oil pressure drops, you can then compare the differences between the other data collected from the car. Finally, in configuration C, you can see that the oil pressure is much more consistent, and the only 2 dips that you see are due to low engine RPM, which isn't a problem because this is isolated to high RPM scenarios. Here's a difference comparing configuration A to C, and with this overlap, you can see a dramatic difference between the two. In conclusion, Formula Delta's prototype large capacity oil pan was able to mitigate oil pressure below the 30% threshold, which is within safe margin. Even turns 4 and 8 being the most problematic for oil starvation, configuration C was still able to mitigate that and reduce it to a safe margin. Next, I'll show you some track footage comparing configurations A and B.